The massive gathering organized by Tommy Robinson and his supporters in London, which was named as Unite the Kingdom, is really impressive, and many critics were really surprised because it attracted more than 110,000 people, according to police sources. Many critics feel that if the police has admitted that 110,000 people or more than 110,000 people were there, then the number must be larger. On the other hand, the organizers or the supporters of Robinson claim that the gathering attracted somewhere between 1 million to 3 million people, which might sound exaggerated, but there is no denying the fact that it was one of the biggest rallies in the history of the British capital. And it was attended by far right leaders or extra conservative, ultra conservative leaders from France, from the UK. Elon Musk also addressed the rally. It clearly indicates that no matter what strict measures the government puts in place, it's not going to prevent the popularity of the far right. Some critics believe that one of the ways to turn the tide against the far right would be to counter their online propaganda, because they are very active on social media. So if you look at 1,000 videos on TikTok, maybe 900 would be about asylum and immigrants. In the same way, the gathering also paid rich tribute to Charlie Kirk, uh, a conservative figure in the United States, who was also accused by critics in the United States of distorting facts. And the same line, according to some critics, has been adopted by the far right or ultra nationalist in the UK, where they distort facts, exaggerate number, and put everything on immigrant and asylum seekers, whether it is NHS, whether it is transport issue, whether it is housing issue. They try to put everything on immigrants, while in reality, if we look at facts and figures, the government hardly spends £2 billion on asylum seekers and immigrants. Many critics believe that a significant percentage of this amount goes to hotels, owners, and transport companies, and maybe catering, which are owned by, in some cases or in many cases, by white capitalists, while the government is pumping a huge amount in defense, which many critics, including some politicians, feel the country does not need, especially given the fact that the USSR, that used to be an arch enemy of the Western capitalist world, is no more there, and the country does not face any significant threat. In the same way, when it comes to housing issue or landmass in the UK, so 30% landmass, it is claimed, is owned by aristocrats or rich people in the British society. In the same way, around 18% is owned by corporation, and 17% is owned by banks. About rental properties, more than 4,000 rental properties owned by a British bank, and more than 11,000 are owned by only one company that is making money. So some people might argue that at the end of the day, it's class issue. The rich capitalists, no matter what no matter what is their racial orientation or racial background or religious background, they have got the same interests. So, like the American conservative, the British conservative or ultra nationalist also distort facts, and they also spread lies. For instance, in the aftermath of the unfortunate and highly condemnable incident of Hartlepool, where innocent girls were attacked by a British man of African origin, They spread lies about the identity of attacker, claiming that he was Muslim, and that triggered riots, and the government had to take very strict measures. So they also heaped eulogies on Charlie Kirk, and he was also accused of spreading lies. For instance, in one of his videos, he asked a black American girl that what is the percentage of black Americans in American population, and then he went on to explain that it was just 13%, while they are involved in more than 60% crimes. So Charlie Kirk said 60%, but there were other far right activists in the United States who asserted that they are involved in 80% crimes. While there is a report of the Reuters that tried to countercheck these claim of Charlie Cook and the far right activists in the United States, and it turned out that almost 84% white victims were killed by white in the United States, and 93% black victims were killed by black perpetrators. But no one can challenge their lies. That's the problem. So if some critics feel that the left will have to come up with an effective mechanism to counter their lies, especially on social media, because TikTok and other mediums of social media are accessed by ordinary British people who tend to buy these lies of the far right. For instance, I have just told you um, about landmass, or the land ownership in the UK, and rental properties. So they never discuss that more than 12,000 or 11,000 rental properties are owned by just one single company, which is white, and more than 4,000 properties owned by just one British bank. In the same way, more than 30% of British landmass is owned by rich people or former aristocrats, 17% by banks, and 18% by corporations. So they don't talk about this. Uh, of course, this is purely a class issue, so that's why they do not want to discuss. There are critics who also argue that these far right activists and conservative politicians do not talk about class. For instance, it was basically the policies of Margaret Thatcher that have created so many problems for the working class of this country. She was the one who triggered deindustrialization of the country by coming hard on trade unionists and workers who were overwhelmingly white. She was the one who threw support behind Afghan militants or Afghan mujahideen along with American President Reagan. And today, when far right activists talk about Islamist or fundamentalists, they do not mention that it was Margaret Thatcher who threw support behind these fundamentalists. And it was not enough, it is also alleged that the West, directly or indirectly, also threw support behind fundamentalists in Syria. And one of the fundamentalists, Ahmad Shara Jolani, who was declared terrorist, who was one of the founders of terrorist outfit Al Qaeda, Al Nusra Front, and Islamic State, he is now heading the Syrian government, and Trump, the hero of the far right, is hobnobbing with him, and the Western governments are also preparing to recognize him. It is also alleged that the West also supported Chechen fundamentalists, beside throwing support behind Muslim fundamentalists in Kosovo and part of Yugoslavia, former Yugoslavia as well, because their main target was Milosevic, who was a dictator there at that time. In the same way, the West supported fundamentalists in Syria because their main target was Bashar al-Assad. Some critics say that it is not just the recent history, but if we look at history during the Cold War, all fundamentalists in Islamic world were supported by the West, Ikhwanul Muslimin or Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, Mastoumi, which was a conservative Islamic party in Indonesia. It was also supported by the West to counter Suikarno, who was anti-Western leader. In the same way, fundamentalist Ayatollah Kashani, who was the mentor or guru of Ayatollah Khomeini, he was also supported because Iranian president of during the decades of 1950s, Mossadegh, nationalized Anglo-Iranian oil company, and the British and the American governments were strongly opposed to him, so they supported fundamentalist Ayatollah Kashani and anti-Mossadegh forces, and finally toppling his government. In the same way, Afghan militants or Afghan fundamentalists like Gulbuddin Hikmatyar, Abdul Rasul Sayyaf, Rabbani, and others were also supported by the West during the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan. And Brzezinski, one of the senior former American officials, confessed during the decades of 90s that the United States had started training Afghan militants 6 months prior to the invasion of the Soviet Union. But when you look at far right discourse, of course, Muslim fundamentalists pose a threat to Western countries. They have carried out, some of them have carried out terrorist attack across Europe and other parts of the world as well. But if they are a problem, they exonerate their own leader, especially Margaret Thatcher and Donald Reagan. Both of them were conservative, and both of them are, sort of worshipped in certain circles of the far right. For instance, Margaret Thatcher is considered an icon of many far right activists who have a deep regard for her. But when they talk about fundamentalism or Islamic threats or the Islamist who are equally a divisive force like the far right, they also despise multiculturalism. So do far right activists. They do not want to assimilate in British and Western societies. And far right activists also do not want any assimilation from immigrants. They believe that immigrants cannot assimilate, and multiculturalism has failed. So both of them opposed to multiculturalism. In the same way, one of the problems being faced by working class of the UK is also drugs. And again, that was the gift of Afghan jihad, that drugs did not spread to Asian countries, but it spread all over the world because of Afghan so-called Afghan jihad, and the Mujahideen or the so-called Mujahideen were allowed to smuggle it. And today it is plaguing not only British society but many parts of the Western world. But when far right activists talk about these problems, they do not want to mention Margaret Thatcher, who is in a way their icon. They do not want to mention that she was the one who carried out deindustrialization of the British society by coming hard on trade unionists, and it was her desire to weaken trade unionists. On the other hand, she also opened a British market to be flooded by Chinese goods, and that was one of the factors leading to closures of many industries in the UK. So it is very important for any party in the UK that wants to counter the propaganda of the far right. If they do not become active, especially on social media, if they do not challenge their lies and their deception, then it's very difficult to prevent this tide of the far right, because it seems that ordinary British people are buying the propaganda of the far right, and it is one of the reasons fueling their popularity. So if Jeremy Corbyn or any other political party that might emerge on the political landscape of the British society, it will have to make a dedicated team that should be tasked to counter the propaganda of far right. In addition to that, if the government does not take effective actions, especially when it comes to social services, for instance, if NHS continues to be flooded by patients, and if it continues facing a shortage of staff, if the waiting list is long, if more than 14,000 bus stop, uh, police station or libraries or community center, which were shut down during the time of the Tories, if they were not reopened, if more investment is not carried out, if more money is not pumped into NHS, if affordable housing is not extended to ordinary British people, if schools, hospitals are not properly staffed, if police is not properly staffed, then we should forget about the decline of the far right. The far right will definitely rise in popularity if the government does not address the underlying factors that are fueling the popularity of the far right.